Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. A few weeks back, you heard part one of the show we taped at the 20th Annual Investors Summit. This week, part two with some amazing faculty members in a live studio audience. Today on the Real Estate Guys radio program. This is the 20th time we've done this, and oh my goodness, the faculty keeps growing. First, let's say hello to a gentleman who is making his second appearance at the Investors Summit after joining us last year. He's the rebel capitalist, George Gammon. George, welcome back. What say you?
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. I've really been looking forward to this for a very long time. You said it best when you were talking about when I first got here last year. I said this really isn't an event, it's a family reunion. And so thank you for welcoming me into the family, and thank you for inviting me back.
Absolutely. It's just so good to get folks together that are anxious to learn. And we do it in a pretty paradise place so you can have some fun. But most we've been working really hard. And you took us through a thought process the first day. George came with a couple of different presentations. He said, which one should I do? And the answer was both. But share with us some of the big takeaways that you presented here.
Well, the first presentation, I wanted to go over how the global monetary system, in my opinion, broke in 2007, and it's never been fixed. And I did that with a chart of bank reserves. And one of the key points was in 1987, the amount of bank reserves in the system on the Fed's balance sheet or on the commercial bank's balance sheet was $60 billion with a B. In 2007, it was 40. So $20 billion less, and during that same time frame, M2 money supply went from 2.7 trillion to 7.5, and global GDP growth exploded. So how did that happen if the amount of bank reserves on the Fed's balance sheet decreased by $20 billion? And the answer is the commercial banks' balance sheets in the Eurodollar system. And then what happened in 2007 is we saw the amount of reserves explode higher, up to 3 trillion, and go down a little bit and then exceed $4 trillion. So to me, when I look at that one chart, it just shows that the Fed's balance sheet is now doing what the commercial balance sheets or the commercial banks' balance sheets had been doing pretty much since the 1950s. So you go from FedEx running the global monetary system to DMV. And I think that's why you've seen global growth and growth in the United States decrease during 2008 or since 2008. And I think that's why it will continue to decrease in the future. Because one thing that's been consistent with all the speakers is that the more monetary heroin you give the economy, the more dependency on that monetary heroin the economy has. And therefore, every time we have one of these crisis situations, the probability is very high. The Fed's balance sheet increases, which means the DMV is taking over a larger and larger percentage of the global monetary system and that liquidity, and therefore the efficiency goes down.
You know, I think one of the paradigms that you broke for folks, and people that have been many times kind of understand this, but the idea that a bank makes a loan to a real estate investor doesn't mean they have that money sitting somewhere.
No. In fact, in that presentation that I went over, I showed how banks in the Eurodollar system can create dollars starting with no dollars and without even any bank reserves denominated in dollars. And so it's a system that sprung up as a result of Bretton Woods in 1944 because basically what happened, and Keynes predicted this, and so did Triffin to a certain degree, where the global economy to grow, they would need those dollars and they wouldn't have them, so they would have to come up with a free market system to produce them out of thin air. And that's exactly what they did. And so it may be controversial, but I'm of the opinion that there's nothing that really constrains the commercial bank's balance sheets. They can create as much as, or as many dollars or as few dollars as they choose. It doesn't really have to do with the Fed's balance sheet. And I think to a certain degree, they can create as much collateral as they need as well. So we've moved from a system that, where they can create their own money, then they create their own collateral. So you ask yourself, if there's nothing constraining the bank's balance sheet, technically, then why hasn't it exploded higher, or what makes it go up and down? And the bottom line is just trust and faith in the overall system.
Let's give him a hand. That's George Gammon, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys Radio Show.